Welcome back to Red Hawk Media. As you saw, we've been working in After Effects lately. Our new bumper or intro is a creation in After Effects. If you see it again here, you watch it rotate around, you can see the glare on it, and you can see all the 3D extrusion on it. And that extrusion is what we're working on today. Let's go ahead and take a look at an actual beginning of a project here with no animation whatsoever, just the 3D extrusion. So here we've got our Red Hawk Media. And you can see that it's got some depth to it. I've got a single light shining on it that I haven't really moved around that much, just to kind of show you the effects of the beveled edges and then the extrusion on there. And I made this just a plain Jane white text to begin with. It's on a 1920 by 1080 background. Let's go ahead and get started to see how this all works here. So I'm going to go up to Composition, and I'm going to go to New Composition. And whatever video project size that you're working with, let's go ahead and create that first. So 1920 by 1080. And I go ahead and click OK. And here we are. Alright, first thing, let's go ahead and get some text. And before I start typing, I can change whatever text color I want. So this time let's do it in red. Try that. And go ahead and click up here. Let's dial up the font size right away. And let's see here. That'll work for the font. Red Hawk Media. Alright, now let's go ahead and move that. Get back to my pointer tool here. Obviously a little bit too big. We'll shrink this down. It's kind of nice if you actually go with a smaller font size, and then you take the AV setting here and you stretch out the spacing between the letters a little bit, because then that allows you to see a little bit more of the 3D extrusion in between here. Let's go ahead and get that lined up roughly about so. Okay, next step. We need to actually make this a 3D layer. So down in my layers here, I look for Red Hawk Media, and I click on the 3D button. And that's going to start opening up a bunch of things. It automatically starts processing. Okay. Before we get going too far, you can see how my 3D axis is over here. We're actually going to change that, so I'm going to go to the Pan Behind tool, click on that, and I'm going to grab that axis, and I'm going to move it over and center it right between the anchor points here, perfectly dead center. That way, if I do any rotating with it or anything like that, it will work exactly off of that anchor point in the middle. Alright, next step. Let's go ahead and add a new layer. So I go up to Layer, I go to New, and I'm going to add a camera. Okay, we're just going to go with the standard 50mm for now. Depending on how close of a shot this is going to be, you could change it up to other angles here, or other millimeters. I add on my camera. And that's going to allow me now to move around the 3D object. So if I go to the camera mode now and actually move around this, I can see that right now, when I go completely sideways, that there's not really any depth to this whatsoever. Okay, so it's like plain Jane there. Okay, let's go ahead and put this back to where it was. You can see that it rotates nice and neat though, right from the middle of the text here. And now at this point, if you haven't yet, what I would do is I would go ahead and up here where it says renderer, yours probably says classic 3D because that's the default setting when it starts. Okay, I want to change this from classic 3D to ray traced. That's going to give me a few more options in my geometry here. So when I go to Red Hawk Media, and I go to the drop down of the different options that are under here, I can see in geometry options now that I've got an extrusion depth. Now that's the part that makes the letters actually have some thickness to them. So I go ahead and dial that up, and this will be trial and error. Good way to kind of do this though is go ahead and add a little depth onto it, and then with your camera tool selected, go ahead, hold shift, and just rotate it to the side here. Just enough so you can kind of see what's going on here. And you can see now that we've got the ray trace 3D going on, it takes a little bit longer to render in between all of this stuff. Now right now everything looks like just a big mass of nothing. It's kind of ugly actually. It's just a big blur. We we have to shine some light on the topic here to kind of clear things up. So I'm going to add in another layer before I make too many changes and see what the light does to it. So I go up to Layer, and I go to New, and I'm going to add in a new light. Make sure that it's a point light. The color is completely up to you. If you want to go for a softer feel, you can go with a yellow like an incandescent. But again, that's up to you. Go to Cast Shadows if you want the light to actually put shadows off of like the text. So when the light hits the text, it will actually cast the shadows. If you don't want that, you just want the text to be lit, don't check that. Okay, and okay. I was going to drop in my lights right in front of everything here. Okay, and you can see now with the light on there that we've got some thickness to this text. You can see the edges of everything. And as you rotate it around here, let's get more of a side view. The light is going to have a different effect on it throughout all this. So now I would position the light depending on where I want to light on my text. If you want to move the light around, make sure you're on the light layer. Just switch over to your pointer tool. And then over here, using your x-axis, you can go ahead and bring the light over so that it's more in front of your actual workspace that you're working on here. But just make little adjustments here and move it around so that you can actually see what's going on here. Okay. You can bring it down. Then if you want to bring it in closer or further away, of course you've got your z-axis. So the y takes it up and down. The x one, if I can get on there, takes it to the side. Okay. And then the z-axis, if I go to that one, and you can see that it starts to add rendering time. Now, if you're getting annoyed by the rendering time and you just want to make some quick adjustments, go ahead and switch this down to like 3rd resolution. It's not going to look as nice, but it'll allow you to make changes a lot quicker here. And now I can move my light around to wherever I feel it's going to be. And it reacts a little bit quicker. So there we go. That's pretty close in. I can bring my light out more. And you get the idea here. So now I go ahead and make my adjustments. One more thing that I would recommend on all of this, I'm going to go back to the text here, or back to the camera, and I'm going to just rotate around this. And I'm going to bring the Red Hawk Media back to the front like this. And you can see where my light is in relation to everything now that I've got this rotated. I'm going to add on these edges. They're still kind of blurred together quite a bit. So one effect that you can put on the text that helps out quite a bit is I go up to, after selecting my text layer, I go up to Effect, and then I go down to, and I'm trying to remember where this is, I believe it's under Perspective, and we go to Bevel Edges. Bevel Edges will just give the edges, depending on which you choose on it. So let's go to this up here. I can go first into the Bevel Edges style here, and I can change it to angular, so it's going to be a tough angle. Concave, it's going to be sunken in, or convex, of course, it bulges out. So go to angular, and then you can see already that puts a nice line on there that contrasts with the edges. Now I can change where that line shows up, just kind of like a drop shadow, or stroke weight, or any of those items, or the bevel feature in your blending options. And that looks a little bit better there. I can change the light color on that so that it has a different effect. And then I can change the light intensity on it too. You can even change the edge thickness, but a little goes a long ways here. There we have it. So that gives a little bit more of a hard edge that you can see, and it helps the extrusion to kind of stick out a little bit more too and be distinct from the font face, which is the front of it. Okay. Now from here, depending on what you're going to use this for, you probably want to be able to move this around. So probably the easiest way to go about that is on the text layer itself. After you get things looking the way you want, of course you're going to use the y-axis or the x-axis to move it around. Another handy feature is the rotating tool. So if I go to the rotating tool or hit W to do that, I can rotate on the x-axis to, say, tilt down. And then for the z-axis, I can rotate around that way too. So if I want to really fit something into my shot perfectly to line it up, I can do that. Now this is just for rotating around the different axes. If I want to actually go back to moving it, I got to go back to my move tool, and now I can stamp that down here. And you get the idea. Now, a quick example here, if you wanted to see how this works in kind of more of like a 3D space with something in relation, let's go ahead and add in another layer. We're going to add in a solid, and I'm just going to make it a kind of gray background here. And we're going to go with that. It's our canvas size. And then I click OK. Alright, right now it takes up the whole space. We're soon to change that though. So I'm going to hit W on here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it. Oh, not that way though. Let's rotate it the other way. First, before we can rotate it, we can only rotate it, you know, sideways right now because it's not 3D. We make it 3D. That helps. And once it's there, after it renders, because we've got one more 3D item in here now. Okay. The other thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to drop this layer down so that it's actually underneath the Red Hawk Media layer. So I'm going to bring that down to the bottom here. And we're not seeing anything yet because we haven't made any changes. I'm going to hit caps lock so it doesn't refresh for the moment. And I'm just going to rotate this around the x-axis. Like so. And before I do that, I'm going to rotate a little bit around the Y. This, and then rotate it forward so it's more like a floor. Let's rotate it this way, and then push this. There we go. That's the one I really want. Doesn't matter which way this is facing as long as it's kind of level here. Alright, let's get our move to now, and then we're going to take this and push it down like it is a floor. And then we can take the scale, so I hit S, brings up scale in the layer, and then I can dial this up so that it eats up all that space there. And then we'll just slide it over right here. And now we take off the caps lock key so we get this all refreshed. And it's only at a 3rd resolution right now, and you can still see that it takes a little while to render all of this. The more 3D layers you start to add in, the more complex. So here's my gray floor at this point. Okay, and then I've got my text. Now I can take my gray floor and move it up until it gets closer to my text actually. And I gotta be careful not to cover that up because I want my text sitting on top of that. This is how we start to create a 3D room or a 3D space so to work in. And now you can start to see the contrast between the two. So I'd switch over to my text layer now, and I'd start to tinker with the rotations here. So I hit W to rotate, and then let's bring it back around this way, and let's rotate it so it's roughly at the same angle as the other one here. And rotate it on the x-axis then, and then I push that back down. Okay. Something like that. Okay, switch over to the move tool. And then I can take that and push it back down in Z space. And you can see the text is starting to shrink out there because it's going through the floor. We'll bring that back up, and you get the idea. So that means that I got to rotate on the y-axis a little bit to flatten it out so it matches the angle of the floor. Okay, and we'll just let this catch up with everything so you get one last look at it. But it gives you a good idea of how you can create some of that 3D text and then work it right into your shots and maneuver it around. Now, the next example, if you stay tuned here, will be actually to show how you can put a film clip in here and then actually maneuver the text back into the film clip to make it look part of it. We'll start off with a static film clip, and then we'll do some motion tracking in the following episode. So that's just looking ahead. All right, thanks for joining us again. This has been another episode of Red Hawk Media. Bye.